And the NPA busy, hard at work reviewing the Zondo Commission report with a view, of course, to act on those who are responsible for state capture. We ask the question, will they act and will there be successful prosecutions? We have with us the United Democratic Movement leader, Bantu Holomisa, and General Secretary for Saftu, Zwelinzima, Vavi, and talk to us a little bit more on this question. Gentlemen, good evening, and thank you very much for your time. General, you have, and I'm sure even with you, Dadu Vavi, in recent times interacted with our law enforcement agencies, and you've presented a number of your own investigations for them to carry them out, General, in particular, with the situation with the then Minister of Military Veterans, now Speaker of Parliament. And if you look at how they handle those kind of issues, do you have any faith in the work that the Hawks and the NPA are currently doing to review the work of the Zondo Commission?
Well, good evening. If there is a political will in any country, the law enforcement agencies would do their work. But here at home, we know
we seem to have lost the general there. We'll get him back in a moment. Technology getting us into trouble today, this evening, I see. Dadu Vavi, I hope you are there. I mean, your initial response to the report was to welcome it. Now that you've heard even the response from the NPA setting up a task force, I mean, what is your feeling on the work that they are now currently doing in preparation to get this prosecutions underway?
Just to take you back, you recall that Saftu laid charges, criminal charges, against a company implicated in the killings that lost South Africa millions of rands in ESCOM. Compiled a thick file with every piece of evidence that we can gather, presented it to the criminal justice system through the police specialized unit dealing with crimes related to commercial difficulties, or the commercial crimes unit of the police. That was in 2017, Mhluli. Now 2021. Not once did they call us to say, we looked at your file, we found evidence, or we found it absolutely not useful, and we are therefore doing nothing, or we are doing the following in relation to the matters that we are reporting. Absolutely nothing up to so far. Nothing. It was actually thrilled when they received that terrible publicity arising out of us laying those charges that paid back 600 billion rands to ESCOM.
Right.
That example alone should tell us the difficulties we're going to be facing going forward.
I want to talk a little bit more on those difficulties, but General, you're back now. Wherein you were saying if there was political will in the country.
yes, if there was a political will in the country, any country for that matter, the law enforcement agencies would have done their work. But in a situation like here, where the corruption is institutionalized from top to bottom, you cannot expect that the law enforcement agencies will act independently, and especially if they were deployed specifically to do some dirty work in those institutions. In this case, let us welcome this so-called task team. But what I would suggest we do is that let us take both commissions, Mpati Commission and Zondo Commission evidence leaders, as well as the support staff which did investigations and forensic investigations and so on, and be part of that task team so that the Hawks and the NPA don't start from scratch. But what we should be doing is to divide the tasks. Who is going to focus on the internal work, that is the monies which have been misused internally? And who is going to look at the monies which have been transferred outside the country? In doing so, we look at the bilateral agreements we have with countries like USA, Britain, and many others, and ask for their assistance, that they must assign special investigating officers,
Right,
so that we speed up the information we need. If, for instance, we say, Party Commission said the pensions monies in the PIC were misused or were stolen, and some are lying somewhere outside the country. Take, for instance, the PayDiff 1 and PayDiff 2, which spent over $600 million US. Where was that money invested in the infrastructure in the continent?
well, we seem to have lost the general there again. All right, let's get back then, Vavi, to what you were saying in terms of the challenges. Explore for me what you are seeing as institutional weaknesses that must be addressed, and how you would want us to explore options to boost that capacity and capability within the NPA.
To do the work again. And bear in mind that it's a question of trust. We don't trust those guys in the Hawks and NPA. So let us guard them.
All right. General, you can mute there. I think your line is giving us some interference. I'm going to mute you for a second, and let's get Vavi just to weigh in. Explore for us, Vavi, the options in your view that could boost the capacity within the NPA, and what you see as institutional weaknesses within the system.
It's a total crisis because we believe that the criminal justice system itself is in its knees, is on its knees in our country. The police themselves tell parliamentarians that in any case or cases of criminality conducted against ordinary people of this country, there's only a 48% chance of identifying those behind those criminal activities. 48%. 48% means that 52% of people who commit crimes do not get arrested, do not get held accountable. That's the extent of the crisis. Of the 48% that would have been arrested, there is only a 15% chance that they will be convicted. That's what the police tell the parliament. And in relation to crimes committed against women, rape, there's only 11% chance that the people who are alleged to be committing rape crimes against women will ever get a conviction. Now, when you're facing that picture of how pathetic and how hopeless your criminal justice system, you've got to then wonder, what does this task force announced by the Hawks and the NPA will mean? Where will they suddenly develop a capacity to find stamina to address the crisis or that has been exposed by the Zondo Commission? More so because we want to make few examples where the NPA, Hawks, the police, the criminal justice system has wholly failed the people of this country. Look, for example, around the TRC Commission report. It identified the numbers of individuals that ought to be prosecuted. So far, not one of the apartheid crimes have been prosecuted in this country. Secondly, there are 30 financial institutions that were caught red-handed manipulating the currency of South Africa. These were caught and were given heavy fines in the United States by that government, but here at home, not one of them have been held accountable. Thirdly, the Hitachi had to pay a total of $19 million in fines in the USA for corruption related to them bribing the Hitachi, a company so linked to the ANC's inflation of prices in Medupi and Kusile. Not here in South Africa, they have not been held accountable. Corporates in this country are moving 400 billion rands annually, according to the financial services sector of government. Not one company have ever been prosecuted. Not one CEO have been held accountable. And the PwC basically tells us that we are rated consistently #1 or #2 of having the most corrupt corporates in the whole world. By the way, the same people who are accused of being the worst corrupt in the world met yesterday, Musa, and they are saying that they are going to offer the NPA some private prosecutors. Can you believe it?
That would have been my next question. I'm going to put that because we're going to run out of time. General, what do you make of that offer from a business and civil society organization to say, we can help because clearly there is a lack of capacity in this institution?
Well, if they have money, they must deposit to National Treasury, not directly to the NPA. So we welcome that money. After all, they stole it.
That Vavi, your feeling?
There's no free money. There's no free lunch.
the NPA is saying, well, we welcome the assistance, but we would want to insulate ourselves from precisely that perception of being influenced.
For example, if perhaps the suggestion that the general is making, that instead of them depositing the money so that it can talk to the conscience of the NPA directors, maybe that money must be deposited into the treasury so that the treasury can use that to fund the NPA, which is a crisis, by the way, that have been caused by the business itself. And we can't isolate these crises from one another. The business leaders in this country, the big ones, have been putting government under tremendous pressure, assisted by the rating agencies, to adopt a strategy of cutting expenditure left, right, and center. And that expenditure cuts have now paralyzed the NPA, paralyzed the police, the education, the healthcare, the municipalities. Now that the institutions are being paralyzed through austerity programs and neoliberalism, the people who champion those politics turn around and they say to the NPA, we see you have no money. Take money from us and prosecute those that are mentioned in the Zondo Commission. By the way, the Zondo Commission, commendable the work as we should, because we should commend that work at all times. But we must not fool ourselves that represents the totality of corruption crisis in the country. Saftu insists that the biggest corruption is actually taking place in the private sector. And it is exemplified not only by the 400 billion rands illicit cash outflows, but it is also exemplified by the 35 to 40% of money, the procurement budget that gets looted, mainly by the private sector hyenas who inflate prices. It is also exemplified by the fact that a commission established by the government to establish the tax conduct of everybody, brought evidence that said we estimate that on minimum this country loses 50 billion rands annually to tax dodging schemes.
I've got to wrap it up. But General, let me give you the final word then on this one. Speaking of names that will come up, and it's only the first part that we're looking at, we're possibly looking at more names coming out of people who are already sitting, holding position, maybe even in the executive. Are we going to see a total collapse of that executive?
I didn't hear that question.
General, I'm saying, are you expecting that we will see a collapse of that executive with names that are going to be mentioned? With the first part of the report, there is an expectation that in the second and the third part of it, there will be even some sitting ministers at this particular point.
I would even say there is a legitimate expectation on the part of South Africa that if it's true that we have a democracy in this country, now that the establishment, that is the government, the ruling tripartite alliance, have been caught with their fingers in the till, we expect them to resign the government and call for elections. Don't pussyfoot about this. I've been saying, let us have an interim government. Let these people go and fight outside. And that interim government would be the one which would implement all these findings of Mpati Commission, Zondo Commission, and recover the monies stolen by the ANC for Lututu to maintain Lutuli House and its structures. So there is, I again say, there is a legitimate expectation that this government should resign en masse.
Gentlemen, I appreciate your time. We're out of time completely. Thank you very much, Bantu Holomisa there and Zwelinzima, Vavi.